Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. I am Kyler Cheatham, your host here at Bite Size Live, and I am very excited to be joined by my colleague and guest today, Raghu Mohan, who is going to be talking about quantum technologies and how we really look at those as far as implementation, taking theory and more tactical into our conversation today. So, just before we get started, if you haven't been here before, welcome. I really appreciate you joining us on Bite Size Live. It really helps me out when you follow the podcast on YouTube or the newsletter on LinkedIn so we can make sure we have all these amazing guests still joining us, kind of get the word out. And with that, the mission here is to kind of bring together all different ideas. There's no one way to do technology implementation correct. It's really what's best for the business. So, this exchange of ideas between me and our guests, and then also in the chat as well, is an amazing opportunity for you to kind of join in. So, I invite you to drop your ideas, your insights, your questions, wherever you're joining us from today. We can see all of it, it aggregates, and then we can see it in the chat. So, with that, just to test the feature, if you could go ahead and drop wherever you're joining us from today. We do have a very cool global community here at Bite Size Live that we always love to see where our guests are from. So, with that, we are talking about really getting the value out of your quantum type strategies here. So I've met Raghu on LinkedIn. He does some amazing thought leadership, and his link to his thought leadership is linked below. He's an industry expert, has an amazing amount of experience, not only on the enterprise tech side, but also kind of bringing us in to talking about the quantum realm in a very kind of relevant way, I would say, Raghu, that comes with the ability to understand what are the tactics around looking at these types of things. So, if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourself to our guests, and we can kind of go from there.
Again, thank you so much, Keller. Again, brilliant, highlighting it as vision to value. That makes it very powerful, right? Having said that, I would like to give credit to the science behind it and the minds behind it as well, right? It's very exciting to be here. I'm looking forward to see what these emerging and advanced technologies are going to bring to us in future. Um, Again, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my perspectives today. About me, my name is Raghu Mohan. I've been in the automotive manufacturing and technology industry for about 22 plus years. I've been driving transformative initiatives across several industries, highly passionate about innovation and technology. That's what keeps me continuously learning. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So before, we always cut to the chase here on Bite Size. Before we get kind of into some of our audience questions, some of our talking points. Can you kind of explain the hype around theories or quantum overall strategies, and kind of what is that actually supposed to deliver as far as business value?
Absolutely. That's a great thought about what has been happening around us in the quantum world. I would like to put it this way: it's not old, it's not new, because of a lot of the experiments going around the quantum technology itself. Because what falls under that umbrella is the computing aspect of it, the communication aspect of it, sensing, and much more, right? It is in the nascent stage. Not all industries are using the quantum as a technology. They are using the quantum principles, I would say. But what is the key here is how this technology needs to be adopted. We have a lot of learnings. We have seen the waves of
Mhm.
cloud and AI today, how these technologies leverage each other to deliver those business values, create values, and outcomes as well, right? If you want to look at the stage step by step approach of how this could be implemented or adopted, or how the leaders need to be thinking about it, of course we have a lot of frameworks and playbooks today. The key aspect of it is in multiple stages. I would try to put it in phases to make it much more simpler in terms of understanding it well. The first phase is the foundation and the exploration, what we call as
Mhm.
the awareness and the education that we need to create within the organization or around us in an ecosystem where we want to really bring in this as a technology, giving out as creative values, right? It definitely includes the infrastructure aspect of it. And then what we look at are suggesting it to be a prototype for experimentation on
Hmm.
what challenges that it could bring in, looking at the behavior, evaluating it, looking at the risk perspective, and so on. And the next phase is definitely the scaling aspect of it, which should go along with optimization and the very critical aspect of bringing in a governance model, right? The third one is innovation, safety, security. The security aspect of it is much more bigger. It's an industry altogether, right?
Yeah.
And in addition to that, the resiliency too. And not to forget the three pillars which makes it more successful in terms of any advanced technologies that we are seeing already today to what quantum might bring to us in future. I would
Yeah.
like to put it as three key pillars. One thing is definitely the partnership and the alliance angle. The second one is the talent acquisition and the development. And third one is the risk management and the mitigation, right? So
Yeah.
that's where we are today. We are seeing a lot more challenges, but we are ready to adapt it, but it is coming our way. So we need to prepare.
Yes, absolutely. And I think some of those foundational things from our conversations and work together, Ragu, sounds is very similar to kind of getting that readiness for things like AI or machine learning. Can you kind of talk about business foundations that need to be in place in order to leverage something like quantum computing or mechanics?
Absolutely. See, if we talk about quantum computing mechanics itself, to go back to its basics on what it is all about, we've been hearing this since several decades now. Many of the organization name it now, it's IBM or Amazon or Google, semiconductor industries, healthcare industries,
Mhm.
communication, media, and a lot more. Right? A lot of investments have gone into this, but the basics of what we can understand is all this while we have seen what we see as the bit values being 0 and 1. But in terms of qubit or technology, what we see as both of these going together, it is possible, right? A lot
Mhm.
of experimentation have been done. So this has been adopted in many industries. It has been in the labs today to prototyping to evaluating its business values or the outcomes or the benefits that we're seeing, but what it can do in future. And every time we do this, the right question to be asked is what is the business value that it is generating, right?
Mhm.
That's how we tie it on to what we call as the cost savings, or it could be revenue generation itself in terms of why we have invested in that direction. What could it do to the industry, because every industry is different and every product is different. Is it really needed, not needed, use only the principles or the technology itself, right? In addition to that, reduced risks and enhanced efficiencies, right? So it's
Mhm.
it's it's an approach, it's a mindset on being prepared to what's coming our direction, and then take it the way it needs to come, and all the learnings and best practices that we already have in front of us.
Absolutely. And how many businesses would you say? Like, and I know this, I'm already, as I do to all of our guests, going off of our outline because Raghu just has such amazing insights.
Absolutely.
But how many businesses do you think are actually even close to ready for something like this? Would you say maybe like 1%? Or what does that look like?
So it's definitely not 1%, I would say. The reason being that it is in the nascent stage, right?
Uh-huh.
Primarily it is in the advanced R&D.
Hmm.
But what we see is that over the decades, a lot of experimentation has gone into place, right? I would definitely not say it is 1%. It is far beyond what we call as something, not an initial phase, not in the in the medium aspect of it. It's very closer to what we want to see it as reality, right?
Hmm.
That's where we are. We are trying to bridge gaps, and that is where the quantum comes into place in leveraging the already existing advanced technologies. It could be digital twin, it could be IoT, it could be edge computing, and
Hmm.
definitely the IO, right? I mean the AI itself,
Hmm.
because artificial intelligence is playing a very important role in catalyzing what we'll see and what this quantum can do in future for us, right? It's
Yeah.
definitely not in the nascent stage. A lot of principles have been used. It's much more and beyond that.
Yeah, interesting. So interesting. Well, I want to get into a few kind of more specific examples because I always think it's helpful to kind of like follow how real businesses are using these use cases. But before we do that, Raghu, I'm going to get to some of these questions over here from our audience. So thank you so much for all of these amazing questions that are coming through and sharing where you're joining us from. Again, it looks like we have a very global audience today. So I'm going to go with what are some of the biggest misconceptions about quantum that you still hear from enterprise leaders or maybe industry leaders? Can you take us through that? We'll kind of myth bust here.
Absolutely, because see, right now we are in the era of AI, right?
Mhm,
Advancing in the AI to what we saw as something that might not be suitable to any industry, to what we see as going beyond the prototype and scaling it, right?
mhm,
I would like to give this an analogy as an analogy because quantum is coming our way, and the way we have been looking at it is okay. This has been done for several years, right?
mhm,
It is useful, not useful in any industry, but it has been proven with certain facts, and there are a lot of articles out there, blogs
mhm,
out there, white papers, and so many technical papers that we can see that yes, this is something that could leverage the existing technologies, right? For example, healthcare itself, the way it has been
mhm,
advancing in terms of how these drugs are manufactured. They're coming out with solutions for several of the diseases that are newly upcoming. You see the COVID itself, right? The kind of computational power that it has, the quantum itself has, and in addition to leveraging the AI in making this a success. So that is very tremendous, right? We need
mhm,
to really, it is creating a very powerful impact in every industry, I would say, right? And
mhm.
all of these put together, it's going to be equally challenging in terms of adapting any newer technology. We have seen this happening, right? Any
Yes.
industry has seen this, but then we are not too far. So we can get through this, and people are getting through this. It's just that the mindset of where you can leverage this, right, as a technology to be
Mhm.
successful and deliver to the outside world.
Absolutely. And I think, just to build on that, some of these biggest misconceptions is it's like this weird, virtual reality realm where this is actually a business strategy, right? We're not talking about the Avengers where they're jumping into a time machine or something like that, right? We're talking about actual businesses strategies. I think that's what we've started to overcome with AI and this narrative of, red-eyed robots chasing you down the street. That's not what
Absolutely.
artificial intelligence is, right? So understanding those popular culture references and then kind of breaking it down. Again, I love your example of, drug discovery and molecular simulation you kind of talked about in
Right.
pharmaceuticals in life sciences. And I know Cambridge Quantum, I just read an article, and their colleague D Wave, both kind of quantum firms, have started to simulate molecules and predict their properties to potentially reduce that time to actually discover critical drugs. So that's an example of kind of how what Raghu's talking about here, of how it's kind of changing and expediting the ability to produce needed product or to be more efficient in other areas of the business. And I think that's the biggest misconception we'll have to get over is it's a business strategy, just like we see with AI a lot as
Right.
well.
Right. Just to add to it from the
Mhm.
misconception point of view, we have seen this in the past, right?
Good point.
And this is going to come in the future as well. Um, because it is new, right? Everything that
Always.
we do today always comes with a risk. It's just that how we build our governance model to get it right, that's what really matters.
Hmm.
And it's enhancing our capabilities. See, we have to look at it as something that we could utilize for the benefit of what we are trying to achieve in future. It's more of a futuristic aspect, and what we can do very quickly to get there. So it's all about that. I'm very sure that a lot of the industries are getting through it. They have overcome those and built newer frameworks so it can be leveraged in what comes out as a much more complex system when we
Hmm.
have to leverage multiple of these technologies together, leveraging each other. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious to turn to the audience to hear what are some examples of how you've seen quantum strategies in businesses you support, businesses you work in, or just articles that you've read around kind of the coverage of these types of emerging technologies. It's always interesting to hear, what other people have experienced as well. And kind of moving into that experience, what makes quantum worth it? Like, what is the why behind that, and understanding the path to ROI? I know, every single time we go and our colleagues go to kind of get budget for a new technology project, we have to come up with the why financially, but then we also have to explain the why to our team, right, to be successful. And that's something that I really wonder around these projects. How do you explain and map that ROI?
Absolutely. Talking about worthiness, see, it's all it's the evolution, right? And what
Mhm,
these newer technologies can bring in as transformational and revolutionary aspects into several industries, right? So, like I did mention earlier, it is not new, right? It's just the
mhm,
way of looking at it has to be newer because we have to overcome the challenges. So
mhm,
that's what makes it more worthier. And what has been catalyzing the quantum as a technology itself, um, I would say that maybe if we would have not proved ourselves to leverage these already existing advanced technologies that I talked about, right? They might
mhm,
have not added value into what and how we look at the quantum today, right? Very rightly said, the why is always a question. This has been
yes.
in every leader's mind as an initiative when they start think about newer technologies, adapting it, because it has to be led from the front all the way from top to the frontliners who are trying to work on this and seeing how it can benefit. Maybe it could be day to day or what their
Mhm,
inventions are, what their innovations are, the creative mindset, and so on. Right. So it tags into all of these because any leader, any industry would definitely want to evaluate the need of this technology right within their organization or their ecosystem. This has to be very well evaluated in terms of whether it is
yes.
generating that revenue, any cost saving, any efficiencies, optimizations that could be seen. If this is not tagged well, I would say that forget about quantum. Any technology would have still stayed in the labs as an experiment and have been would have been forgotten today, right? Leading
Yes.
to business and technology disruptions. So the way we need to look at it and leverage and overcome these challenges is the key here.
Absolutely. And I think that is such a great, realistic way to look at it. It's not new. We just feel as though we're calling it something different. And I wonder, our vendor partners are amazing at rebranding things and then reselling them to
Absolutely.
our industry partners. I wonder if that's something that you think that we'll see moving forward, and maybe how can businesses ensure that they stay grounded around making sure they own their project details.
No, I would say this is bound to happen because it's a continuous evolution. What we are seeing, we have these examples. Um, what I would like to talk about is because I'm also an AI advisor, very
Mhm,
recent discussion with a couple of the leaders in terms of where we started with AI. Today we have generative AI, the ML models, the neuro AI to agentic AIs,
mhm,
and not single agents. It is multiple agents or groups of agents being deployed in 30 minutes of time. I was just reading an article earlier yesterday, I would say. This is what is the reality. So this is bound to happen with quantum as well, but
mhm.
the principles would remain the same because the fundamentals, though the quantum fundamentals, though it is very different from other technologies, it is going to remain the same when we actually start scaling it and looking at it in multiple industries with multiple use cases and so on, right? So the I would say the ground aspect of it and the fundamentals are going to be different, but then those are going to be the principles leading what we're going to see as beyond what we already have as communication, sensing, or computing aspect of it. Because see, a lot of infrastructure needs to come into play here. The
Hmm.
computing power itself, the energy management around it, the risks around it, and the governance model, right? These will start creating much more than what we are seeing today. It's just that once it starts becoming reality, leveraging the other technologies, there's going to be much more for us.
That's a great way to kind of describe it and to go through that, as well as kind of the AI foundational piece of understanding what type of AI. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had meetings with executives this year that say 2025, our core strategy is AI. And you're kind of like, that is a sentence, my friend. That's awesome, right? It's definitely great to be innovative, but let's kind of dig into that. What type of AI? What outcomes are you looking for? What foundations do you have in place? How ready are your people? All of those different kind of pieces that you have to understand before you implement AI. I assume that a lot of those are the same, except for a lot of that horsepower that you need behind quantum computing. So I think that's such
Absolutely.
a great overview. So let's get back to some of these other questions here. This is an interesting one. What does successful scaling of a quantum use case look like? Is it a vertical integration, partner expansion, cloud based platforms? What does that look like?
Absolutely. That's a very interesting question because um, many might have read this, and I believe in it as well. It's basically a three horizon approach that we need to look at, right? For any
Mhm.
technology adoption, the fundamental is data, right? And to the other side of it is the cloud technology, right? So the as a first horizon, we need to definitely focus on data and the cloud aspect of it, and around it is the infrastructure, right? And the second one is the engineering, the convergence of the engineering with the technology, because engineering is what makes a lot of things happen and is a lever for technology. That's how I see it. And the
Mhm.
third one is the technology adoption itself and how you do it in a phase wise approach, asking the right question at every phase of the project when you're actually implementing it or
Mhm.
adapting it, right? So that and each use case needs to go through this only because we have lot of the guidelines available, and then how best you can leverage those to make it a success, right? So it could be either in the vertical integration, and it could be partner, right? Because we see a lot of vendors working in the direction today, and collaboration cooperative approach is what is one of the right paths to take for any successful leader, I would say. And of course we have the cloud based platforms, which is becoming interesting on day to day basis, because it's not only the cloud today, it's much more than beyond what we are seeing within AI added to this cloud. And you could name it completely different. So it could be either in any ways, it's vertical partner led approach. And in addition to this, like I've always spoken about, what is the pillar that stands out within organization is making sure that you have a very strong team supporting it, right?
Mhm.
So upskilling, training the team, right, and talent
Mhm.
acquisition as may be needed, that's going to play a very important role taking this forward.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that too. So much of kind of the people side is often forgotten in these types of
Yeah.
transformation, not because of any nefarious agendas, but because a lot of times the energy is focused on how are we implementing this new technology, and we just assume that our people, will kind of come along and take it on themselves to understand and embrace this new tech. And a lot of times that simply is not the case. And it caused so much disruption and just overall technology in a waste product because we haven't upskilled our team to actually maximize the value. So well said there. I want to give you an example kind of here that we can walk through about a real case study around kind of quantum, and it's in your or in the industries you've worked in, and looking at kind of Volkswagen, and kind of giving you an overview of a real world example Ragu, and then kind of getting your insights on how we might scale that to our own businesses, even if it's on a micro level. Not all of us have the budget of Volkswagen, right, or the technology capabilities, but we can still start to forward think, what does this mean for our overall industry? So I'll give you just kind of a quick rundown here. So Volkswagen is one of the first automakers to test quantum algorithms in real world traffic, which I think is super interesting. So, traffic flow optimization, they call it quantum routing.
Right.
And they actually did this project in Barcelona. And they used a partner, D-Wave Systems, which we kind of already mentioned in our life sciences example there. And the goal was to maximize or minimize, I'm sorry, congestion by calculating the fastest route for each car in real time. And so what they did is they didn't use GPS, which would provide obviously the shortest individual path. They used a quantum algorithm that evaluated all vehicles simultaneously to avoid crowding everyone into the same fastest route, right?
Right.
And the outcome they achieved was demonstrating that quantum algorithms can better optimize global traffic flows compared to traditional system. And then they laid the foundation, right, for these future smart mobility applications where fleets of autonomous vehicles or delivery trucks could self distribute across routes to minimize delays. So, first, I want to kind of just get your reaction to that case study. They've done a variety of other things. I just picked traffics, honestly, because I thought it was
Yes.
the coolest. And definitely a real world application that we could utilize today in a variety of global cities.
Absolutely. This is a great example of demonstrating how quantum principles could be used because what we are looking at today with the autonomous vehicles, in addition to what Volkswagen has tried to do in terms of traffic management itself, because um, I've done automotive for 15 plus years. I still continue to do that. I have bachelor's and master's in automotive electronics too. So
Mhm,
I understand the challenges and how quantum as a technology could be utilized within the automotive world. Um, so my perspective on this is it's going beyond what we are trying to do here as a traffic management or avoiding the congestion, right? It's also connectivity, which we call as V2X, right?
mhm,
It could be vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian. So there's a lot of information flow and data collection. This makes it happen. So data is still continuing to be
mhm,
the foundation of all of this, through which it has been achieved by Volkswagen on what we could not achieve through the technology that we already had, right? So this was an experimentation. This has been a great success as well, and is a very good example on how this could be scaled up to other technologies within the automotive area, or getting back to what we are seeing in the complete the manufacturing aspect of it, right?
mhm,
Logistics. It could be again traffic management or fleet management within the industries, the supply chain, and so on, right? So it
mhm,
could be leveraged. So it's a great example out there, and what this opens up and is a learning from here is that if this use case could leverage quantum, right? What in addition to quantum that we can bring in to implement similar or additional use cases along with what we have already achieved in other industries too, right? So that's what really matters, the way we think, because see every use case that has been tested or implemented becomes an example to take it to the next level, right? And also
absolutely.
evaluate its need of it, because there are a lot more there. It's not only that we have an example, we can implement it, yes we can use it, no, right? Because it's the hardware aspect of it, or in general the infrastructure that I would like to call
Mhm.
it, right?
Yeah.
Because infrastructure is, if the data is moving from A to B, see when we are saying A to B, it could be a single entity to cloud and back to the vehicle and making some quick decision itself, and lot of analytics behind it to make some
Mhm,
critical decisions, right? It could be for example an ambulance trying to squeeze through the congestion. We need
mhm,
this technology today, right?
mhm,
Which we might have not been achieved. I know there are a lot of things that have gone up There are a lot of protocols being brought up. People have been very helpful on the roads to make this happen.
Hmm.
But then what more can you do, right?
Hmm.
That's what is the reality that we will see in future, and definitely this is going to scale up in many more industries too.
Absolutely. So when we have something as connected as this, right, we have not only the quantum computing type of software, we have the business, obviously, software, we have the infrastructure of the actual city of Barcelona, their data, right? What are the risks of having all of that connectivity, maybe versus the benefits of being able to have these types of efficiencies in distribution, in critical care, like you mentioned there? What are some considerations around those two?
See, data is being looked at as a fuel, as a driver for many of these technologies. At the same time, we need to understand that there is a lot of vulnerability that is created around this data as well, right? That's where the security aspect comes into play.
Hmm.
Either it could be security for any systems that are used for the industrial purpose or for the federal purpose where the data is very critical, right? That's
Hmm.
where we need to bring in those governance model, and it's
Hmm.
not only the security, it's also the resiliency aspect of it. So basically, thinking one step ahead in
Hmm.
terms of what any technology can do, right?
Hmm.
And it's very critical that we bring in some standards, compliances, models around it to make sure it is very ethically, right, used
Hmm.
and responsibly used. So that's what needs to be focused. We are
Yeah.
seeing this today. This is going to happen in future as well.
Hmm.
So the learning here is that okay, we have seen A, B, C, and D in terms of the risks or its
Hmm.
mitigation and how we want to bring in the governance, right?
Hmm.
How do we start with the newer technology because this is going to hit us very soon, right? That's what we
Yeah.
need to focus because say it's as simple as over the years we have learned, right, of doing software development life cycle. We have a software development life cycle, for example. Now
Hmm.
because of the risk that we
Hmm.
have seen, right, and what we have
Hmm.
had to encounter are the bottlenecks and so on, we are trying to bring in the by design aspect of it, agility aspect of it, right, shift left
Hmm.
aspect of it, and also making it secured software development life cycle. If you look at even the
Hmm.
in the engineering language of what we do in terms of the development, right, it's no more
Hmm.
DevOps that we call it. It's DevSecOps. So security is coming in everywhere, and safety and security has to go hand in hand to make sure it is reliable, right? So that's what really is a trust factor for anybody to go ahead and use this technology.
Hmm. And that's such a it's certainly complex, right? Because who is that governing body? How do we
Right.
make those types of policies? And of course, we've seen our colleagues in the EU, really become very, very strict around their connectivity and data laws, which
Right.
has stifled some of their innovation. But then you also see here in the States where we have very little regulation around these types of laws, and kind of seen a lot of those AI ethics be boundaries be pushed, right? So we're still learning from a societal standpoint what that actually means. But what I love what you hit on there is the governance from a business value, that resiliency from a business value. So
Yes.
giving our private businesses, or in here, these collaborations with public sector and innovative type of startup companies, that they actually work together to set that governance model to keep their users, their customers, their products safe. And more importantly, resilient, right, throughout that entire
Absolutely.
supply
Yep.
chain and that opportunity. So Volkswagen, another kind of example I wanted to give you here, talking about battery development and material science. This is a very interesting one that I want to talk to you about, kind of quantum discovering these new types of innovations and kind of digging into what that might look like from a roadmap. We see AI and machine learning, artificial intelligence, all of the smart manufacturing make us more efficient as human laborers, but it hasn't really brought us to the opportunity to discover things as much as I've seen, at least in the quantum world. So for this, their key partner was a Canadian startup, and I'm terrible with names. You guys know that. So I think it's pronounced Xanadu, but if you know how it's pronounced, definitely put it in the comments. So we'll tag them in the comments too so they can correct me. But they used new materials with higher energy density to simulate solid states of electrolytes and predict the performance of lithium metal versus lithium ion chemistry. And what this really means is battery research, right? So they look at how do you create a model that enables faster simulation of electron behavior, meaning the battery stays charged longer, right? And that makes more sustainable supply chains, faster charging times, and lighter EV type of products. And we've seen, speaking of modernization around regulation, a move to be our carbon zero, whether it's in maritime or in our overall automotive industry, to look at how do we use less energy. So, in that, they are discovering ways to build new batteries. Do you think that quantum has opportunities to discover new foundational ways of doing things to be more conscious and sustainability focused?
Definitely, material is one aspect of it, energy consumption is another. And
Hmm.
the third angle to it is bringing in the thermal aspect of making it the battery itself more safer, right? Because see,
Great point.
the thermal profiles that the batteries generate that have a greater impact on how the battery itself performs and adds value to what we're trying to achieve, right? So these are
Hmm.
a couple of things the battery industry is going very deep into understanding. And this could be sometimes very disastrous and very expensive too. So
Hmm.
simulation is playing a very bigger role, and simulation industry is using the quantum principles today. So
Hmm.
that's how it's been leveraged. This is something that I've been reading quite recently as well. And this will come out because I was talking to one of the industry leaders, and they are from the automotive background, and they do a lot of battery tear down, and they do
Hmm.
benchmarking and so on. So they have very interesting aspects of what they're seeing in the multiple batteries manufactured by multiple manufacturers though, right? So how do you optimize this to what we are already seeing as a solid state battery to something beyond that the
Hmm.
quantum principles could be leveraged to develop
Hmm.
in future, right? So
Hmm.
it's a very interesting aspect of it. It's a very great use case that they are really looking at, because it is not only developing new batteries with advanced technologies, it's also the recycling of the batteries, right?
Hmm.
Maybe recycling it to be used in another industry. For example,
Hmm.
something from an industry purpose battery, can it be leveraged if it has that advanced technology already in place?
Hmm.
Can it be used in an automotive in the automotive world, right? Just that's just an example, I would say. But back and forth, but trying to bring in some optimizations there and simulating it to evaluate the behavior, the
Hmm.
efficiencies, the cost
Hmm.
saving, the lighter in the material, which all adds up to what we call as the range that we achieve in the vehicle to drive an electric
Hmm.
vehicle today, right? So all of these very interesting. Definitely, yes, it's going to go beyond what we are seeing today. Bec- I already see that there is a lot of steps already been taken, thought
Hmm.
through by the thought leaders from the industry, in the
Hmm.
industries, to achieve this. And this is coming. This is coming our direction, and this will
Hmm.
open up much more opportunities, because that has been looked at as something that is an amplifier for us, as a catalyst for us
Hmm.
in terms of getting to these goals. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're so lucky to have those industry thought leaders that really push the boundaries and, more importantly, kind of talk about it. Which brings me to this question here on LinkedIn. It's, do you think partnerships like Volkswagen and Xanadu will become the norm for R&D heavy industries trying to push past limits of classic simulation. And I think I'll add to this question. We see here a very established brand, Volkswagen, right? One of the oldest automotive brands in the world, coupled with a newer quantum type of business that supports specifically quantum initiatives. Do you think that will be kind of the partnership of the future of seeing these newer firms coupled with more established brands that have the infrastructure to put these strategies in place?
Lot of it. I would say lots and lots of these mergers and working together collaboratively or co-creating these innovative products is going to happen in future. Volkswagen has taken a very bold step in terms of what it looks at as futuristic technology, and there are several other organizations. It's not only the automotive, I would say, it's the other organizations or the industries too that they're trying to do this. It's
Mhm,
just that it's a matter of time in terms of identifying the right use cases where they can leverage the vendors who are gone much beyond what we see as the advanced technology existing today, right? So a lot
mhm,
more has been done in the direction. This is going to be happening much more in future as well, and we will see newer products coming out. In addition to this, it's very critical that the industries work very closely with the regulatory bodies, right? And
mhm,
also identifying the need and the regulations, compliances, standards in the what is expected out of in multiple geographies too. So these are a couple of challenges, and they
mhm.
are again bound by multiple opportunities at one side, and at the same time the risks evaluation on the other side. So the governance is what will make it happen. Um, this is something futuristic. Yes, I totally agree.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, the puppy popped in to say hi.
Ah,
So
yeah.
she's very interested in quantum computing, but I think that's such an important understanding. It kind of reminds me of the Mars rover team, and working with industry, NASA, right? Industry partners, and then also higher ed, the academia type of colleagues. Is that something that you've seen, that type of partnership as well, with kind of bringing in the research side of it?
Absolutely. I know a couple of industries who are dedicated to working with the universities because of the R&D capabilities and the newer ideas that are being generated, newer concepts that are being generated by the students, right? All of those are taken to the industrial world because that is reality. What I've seen in the um, couple of years ago or decade ago, I have taught in the universities where I used to take the industrial concepts to teach the students so that when they come out as graduates, they already are aware of what is happening as a reality in the
Mhm,
outside world. But now it's the other way around.
mhm,
Industries are going and partnering with the
mhm,
universities to learn from the students on the
mhm,
newer ideologies and the concepts and the technologies
mhm.
itself. So this is really happening, and there has been great results proven as well in terms of what these industries are bringing out in the, as products in the market.
Yeah, I absolutely love that type of partnership. I think there's lots to be learned there. We have a partnership here at the Confluential with a university that's local that, we guest
Brilliant.
lecture there and teach there. And we had River AI was actually developed by some of their students in the AI program. And they worked on it with our in-house AI engineers. I think there's lots to be benefited from not only working with our higher ed colleagues, but I love when industry, academia, and overall public sector cross over so that we can make the world a truly better place. So
Totally agree. A lot of investments have been done in this direction. Budgets been set aside by the industries to collaborate with these universities, right? It's
yes,
not only within the organizations, it's the other way of looking at it as well.
yeah,
Totally
I
agree.
think that's so helpful. So it kind of seems like we are going from here. Let me pop this question down. From kind of we had on-premise enterprise tech, right? Many of us still do,
Yes.
right? Then we move to a cloud-based enterprise tech. And then we kind of move to understanding quantum hardware and what that really looks like. Can you take us? It seems like we're going a little bit full circle of needing some of that understanding around how the hardware has evolved. And it's kind of like the analogy I think of, and stay with me here, is like buying a fridge the size of a car, right?
Absolutely,
So we
absolutely, yeah.
we really have to understand what that looks like to start to set the foundation for that. What type of quantum computers, or what are some considerations around that? Maybe even your thoughts on kind of that full circle evolution.
Definitely, because the size perspective, this is what we have seen. Huge computers when we saw in 2000 by IBM, right? Doing
Mhm,
computations that is beyond the human capabilities and so on. The hyperscalers, so to say, they're already equipped, right? Because we know that even prior to what we want to leverage is a quantum technology, that's something sitting on the cloud, which is not on-prem, right? um,
mhm,
we have high capability processors, right?
mhm,
There are data centers which have this capability of providing these facilities to any vendor through subscription model. We know this, how we
mhm,
use this. We do this day in and day out. Multiple industries do this as well. It's something beyond the hardware size of it that has been already been looked upon. If you look at it for an example as a semiconductor itself, right? The
mhm,
semiconductor industry has a lot more advancements in terms of the size and its capability. Also, what has been looked at, I don't know if many of them might already know this. It's called a Lego model. It's a chiplet, right?
mhm,
Because the reliability was on one single chip we had, which had the processor, the memory, the
mhm,
IOs, and a lot more. Today it is not so, right? Those are like Lego bricks. One is a processor, one is a memory, and one is doing
mhm,
something else.
mhm,
So you can switch between these two, and if something goes wrong, earlier we had to completely scrap the whole chip.
mhm,
Now it is not so. You
mhm,
evaluate what is going on within this Lego brick of a chip, right? And you can just take out one of them, bring in another one. And a lot of R&D has been done in this area. Of course, there are pros and cons in terms of how much heat dissipations, power, and so on. All these contribute to bringing in something new if you want to make it much more capable, right? So
mhm,
it is not as easy as a plug and play, but it is definitely something that has been looked upon, and that is what is made happen today by the semiconductor industries. So it's going to be very miniaturized in terms of the size itself.
hmm,
Earlier we used to see it as something big, something huge. It's no more the case today, right? And
hmm,
all of these capabilities, bringing in multiple technology vendors and the ideologies, the semiconductor industry, the hyperscalers, and so on, they're making it happen. The size is not going to be big enough, but the capabilities are going to be tremendous, right?
mhm.
That's what I could definitely see. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So to kind of, wrap up some of these questions that are around like how do you get started? We kind of talked about the foundational piece of, understanding, creating a culture of upskilling, right? That there's going to need to be a transition there. Understanding your data, right? Making sure that where your data is housed, making sure you have good behaviors around your data, looking at what your AI infrastructure looks like. What are some areas of the business that you would recommend looking at for a quantum pilot in the organization?
Absolutely. Of course, in addition to what you had just listed,
Mhm. Yes.
there are a couple of other things
Yeah.
that comes from the top down approach, because there needs to be very thorough evaluation of the use cases that can really impact the industry itself in terms of they wanting to be standing out as a thought leader, right? That it makes it very critical for a leader from the top down, right, to very clearly understand by double clicking on whether it's really essential. Because the kind of discussions that I've had in the past
Hmm.
with the leaders is we start with an AI discussion, but we end up it to be just an automation, not an intelligent automation, right?
Hmm.
So actually putting down on the whiteboard to say that okay, this is something that is really needed. it is going to be futuristic. Let us make it as part of our business strategy, right? And put together an implementation plan, thoroughly evaluate phase by phase to make sure that if this is going to be realistic for them, right?
Hmm.
So these kind of aspects, by leveraging what we've done in the past with other technologies, please look at the frameworks and the best practice that we have. It may or may not be suitable for every industry, but whatever can be done using these principles could add up to another product or another technology, right?
Hmm.
Boosting its capability itself. Those are the things that need to be looked at. Every industry doesn't have to do this. That's how I see that not all the industries have invested in quantum
Hmm.
today. There are lot of industries to be listed, lot more will come up, but may not be all the industries. So it's
Hmm.
that angle of view that any leader needs to have from the industrial business strategy aspect of it.
Hmm. And I love the way that you approach that because it is so simple. And that's a lot of times when we see these complex technologies, people want to make the strategies super complex, and they
Right.
don't need to be, right? There just needs to be basics around supporting the team that's going to implement it, understanding the why behind it, right? The use case behind it, and the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve. I think a lot of times with these emerging technologies, yes, we have to be flexible and agile because we don't really know what's going to happen, right? But we should also know what we're looking to gain out of that from a business value, not just going to, CES and saying I used quantum computing, like cool. But then how did that help you? How did that benefit your business? How did it help your technology strategy and your people, your customers, your employees, all of those different partnerships around that. So I think that's such a healthy way to look at it. So,
Absolutely, because we're all seeing that there has been a lot of race in adopting to technologies. We
mhm,
don't have to do this for the sake of it, right?
yeah.
We need to understand, first of all, the what part of it that leads to the why, and the how will automatically happen when you're clear about the what and the why.
Mhm.
That's what
And
makes a difference.
yeah, very well said. Very well said. So, if people want to call you and get this what and why around that, how can they get in touch? Or if they have follow up questions around this conversation, what's the best way to follow your thought leadership in the industry?
Absolutely. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would be happy to have a separate conversation on the topics that they have. Definitely a lot of thoughts being invoked in terms of what we're trying to discuss today. And it's an opportunity for me to share all the perspectives. I would definitely want to connect. They can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yes, I can connect with them and then discuss more there.
Love that. Love that. Well, thank you to you, Raghu, for sharing all this amazing insight. This has been such a cool conversation. Thank you to the audience for all of these amazing questions and for joining us today. As always, even if you're watching this in the replay later today or later this week, we will go through and answer all of your questions to make sure that we can connect you with Raghu, or we can go through and give you resources to answer these, because that's super important to me as we get in here and make sure that we are grateful to our audience for joining us today. If you don't follow Bite Size, I would definitely appreciate the follow. It helps us kind of get the word out and have these amazing guests on the show to be able to showcase all of these diverse ideas. As we've talked about in this conversation, there's no one way to do things. So, understanding and arming yourself with all of these opportunities and this knowledge from thought leaders like Raghu is really how you're going to be successful, because it's not about the best technology, it's about what's best for your business, right? So thank you to everyone for being here today. We will be back next week, but here in the States, I hope you have a very happy holiday weekend in celebrating the 4th of July to you and your families, and we will see you next week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I would like to conclude by adding a phrase which is key for any technology. Please focus on the preparation. We know what is coming our way. Let's be proactive there to stand out as a technology and thought leader, right? That's where it makes it successful, and there's a long way to go. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Thank you for concluding with that. Thank you to the audience.